the podcast for neurodivergent weirdos and queers who forget about struggling to adult. They're struggling to human.
At least that's what everyone's telling us.
You're right.
Per usual. But seriously, I'm Angela. People call me Mama Pistachio, bringing sense to the conversation. I help individuals and organizations cultivate skills, spaces, and confidence to advocate for themselves and each other.
And I'm Molly, giving a big fork you to cookie cutter solutions. I help busy as fuck neurodivergent entrepreneurs make shit happen by bringing stability to their businesses while helping them do what makes sense to their brain.
Enough with the chit chat. Let's get down to business. What's the frickin' point?
With our powers combined, we navigate life through the drudgery, dreams, and all that shit in between. Plus, we were already having these conversations anyway, so why not record them, right?
Alrighty then. Get ready to call bullshit on what everyone's saying you should be doing as we navigate the spectrum between what your heart wants and the shit keeping you from it.
Hey!
Good morning!
Good morning! All right. Full disclaimer, we've already talked about it, and this is not a people-y day. So, which is convenient because we're talking about co-regulation today.
We are.
And so I was just saying, like, co-regulation is something that, like, when you're done peopling and you still need people to help you, which is, I feel like a standing theme in the neurospicy, neurodivergent world is constantly having needs that contradict your other needs, which is the most frustrating part of neurodivergent life.
And it's confusing, right? Like, it's confusing through the diagnostic process. It's confusing to our partners. It's confusing to our kids. It's confusing to us, our coworkers. Like, it's very confusing.
Yes. Like, I don't like to be touched, but if you're going to touch me, you got to touch me. Like,
right?
Really firmly. Like, if you butterfly touch me, I'm going to punch you. But, like, don't touch me. But if you're gonna, like, that doesn't make any sense. Like,
right? Yeah. Like, if you're gonna touch me, do it right. That's important. Yeah. Yes.
Or, like, I hate water, but I love the pool.
Yeah. Yes. We could go on and on about that.
So I was just trying to make sure everybody had examples of
co-regulation, because there's this whole narrative, and everybody's going to get really used to hearing me say this. There's this whole narrative out there of self-care.
Oh.
Self-care, do it yourself, take care of yourself, be independent, blah, blah, blah. But it's bullshit. That doesn't work. And we need to take on this belief system, this new narrative that working together and helping each other and supporting each other really is great. And it's not just about your spouse or your partner or the person who you're having sex with to do that.
Right.
It is not just about that. It is okay to do that in all of your relationships. And it was a perfect example last week.
Oh, yes. Yes. Last week was amazing for that example.
Yeah. I mean, like, you and I co-regulate all the time.
Yeah.
Right? We do not live in the same state, but we co-regulate all the time because we understand the needs that we have, and we have negotiated how we can support each other in our friendship. And it helps us get through the day-to-day, and it takes pressure off of that one person, right?
Yes.
Like,
and for me, it's also, I don't expect the people that don't have the skills I need to do the things that I need. Like, if my best friend cannot listen to me vent about whatever, even though I have to say that thing, then I need to find somebody else to do that, because expecting them to do that is just going to make things terrible. Like,
right.
So, yes, agreed. Like, and you and I, it's even funny, even though we've negotiated how we're going to co-regulate with each other a lot. Even yesterday, it was, do you want me to do this thing or do you want me to do something else? And like, we established like a new ground rule. Like Molly always wants input. Molly always wants feedback. Molly will make the decision if that feedback is something she's going to be like, yes, or you're crazy.
Right.
So,
right. Yeah. Because I have a tendency when somebody is venting, if somebody says, I'm just venting, then I am not prepared to provide advice or anything like that. I will just listen. If the person says I'm venting and what they actually mean is, I need your support in this and I need you to say something, then I need them to say that. So I tend to ask,
yes.
Okay, I heard you venting. Is that all you needed? Or would you like me to give input or what? And so sometimes we have to ask for that clarification.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to move us a little bit.
Yeah.
Last week was very hard. Like, I almost started crying, right? Because I was talking about something that I am exceptionally interested in. And I had time constraints on that. And I was already at a point of overwhelm even before coming in, for all different reasons. I was in sensory everything.
Yep.
And so I got to a point of I had so many things to say. And internally, I was feeling overwhelmed because I wanted to say all the things, but I knew that there were time constraints to not really go into any kind of depth into this thing that is so, so, so important to me. And for me to go into that depth, it's going to be like a 5-episode string.
If not more.
Right, which doesn't necessarily work in this kind of format. So last week it was really, really overwhelming for me. And you were a champion. You really came in and you stepped in to help support me through that. Can you, and I didn't prepare you for this question.
No, you didn't.
Can you guide us through that process that you went through to support me in that moment, even though I didn't ask for support?
Yes. So I should caveat this with, I am the co-regulator in all aspects of my life. I am the person that helps others co-regulate. And ironically, like I was just thinking about this when you're talking, even in my business, like what I do is providing neurodivergent folks a way to co-regulate while they grow their businesses and do that. Like that is another thing of what I do. So I am always watching how people look and their body language and kind of just a pretty empathic person. Like I can just sense emotions as well. Probably because my brain has hyper-analyzed everything that they've done, to be fair. And so I could just see you getting frustrated and upset. And you do certain things when you're upset. I'm moving my hands like crazy for all of you listening. And you do certain things so that I know, like, and I also know your stims pretty well too. So like you are a person who takes a lot of deep breaths on a normal basis. But then your deep breaths turn into different noises, like not like a bad noise, like you're just like making a different deep breath. And I can always tell like, okay, this is becoming too much or this is whatever. And even before we started, I was like, Angela's just not having the day that she anticipated. Like things are not going to plan. I know how Angela reacts when things don't go to plan. I will just step up and I'm going to, like, I took all the notes while you were talking before we got on. And so I knew what talking points you wanted. And I knew that I could let you talk forever and we would never get past one. And then you'd be frustrated if we didn't touch at least on most of them. So like I tried to definitely gear that conversation. And if one specific topic was making you more frustrated because you couldn't get the words out or you couldn't do something, I would try and redirect the conversation into something that maybe will, okay, let's try again on a different subject and move on. Like you didn't say anything that I was like she's lost. I'm confused. It was not that at all.
Kind of part of the problem, wasn't it? That
yes.
I wasn't saying.
Right. And I could just tell, like, you had like 3,000 words moving around in your brain. In your brain, but like you couldn't figure out what concept to start with or go with, or how do I say this without deep diving into this other thing. And you were trying to like wrangle rabbit holes, but you, instead of getting like one really good rabbit hole, you were just like
trying so hard to keep it surface level.
Yes.
Which is just, that is really, really hard for neurodivergent folks. And I will say, when I'm in a teaching situation or I'm in a coaching situation where I'm working one-on-one or something like that, it's completely different.
Right.
Because the context of that situation supports where we're going. And so that is all about the other person. Mm-hmm. Right. And so it's, I don't know, easy for me to see the guidance that is needed in that case, or the questions. I guess I'm more in a questioning format in that space. Yeah. But last week, having 45 minutes to talk about this thing that I could talk about one of the letters for 45 minutes.
Right. And I think it felt more like it was in your court too, because it's not one of my specialties. It is something that I'm learning about and expanding and doing in my life, but it is not something that I can come to as like, hi, I'm Molly, the expert on BDSM. Like, I can't do that. And so I feel like a lot of that pressure of like, there's so many things and whatever was also because you knew I couldn't carry the conversation. And so that, like, most of the other topics we've always talked about, like, you may have like a heavier background in certain ways, but I definitely can carry a conversation in that realm and feel confident and good. And in that sense, it was like, I'm just going to follow your lead. I will create the lead.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why, like, it was so important for you to, and we had this conversation beforehand. Yeah. It was so important for you to have some guiding questions to support that, so that I didn't go on a rant.
Yes.
About something specific. And while that's great, you know, that's great in some instances, in others it's not. And and I think that that's one of the biggest challenges that a lot of neurodivergent folks have going into a social situation. And they don't have those conversations beforehand with their friends, right? And their friends know. Yeah. Their friends know.
Yeah.
Right? They know my friend sticks their foot in their mouth, or they talk too much about something and then they get awkward and then people don't like them, and instead of engaging in a negotiation with them and saying, how can I best support you? It's just kind of left. And then what happens is this neurodivergent person, and also, obviously not all of us have these same struggles, but a lot of us do. Then that person stops attending events, stops going to places, which is really sad because we don't have to.
If we don't want to, yeah.
Right? If we don't want to. And for the most part, most of us don't want to stop engaging in social situations. We stop engaging in social situations because they require too much of our energy, because we don't have the support that we need in those situations.
Right. And then you end up learning this, if I do this, then only negative things will happen. Therefore, there's no worth in doing that thing. And so then there's this like false narrative that starts becoming a snowball effect of like, well, if that's like that, then I bet these 3 other things are too. So there's no point in me doing this. And then it snowballs into, I don't need friends. I don't need help. And then the doom cloud that for many of us exists on a normal basis just expands and expands and expands. And then we have a whole new situation that we are dealing with. And that can really stem from not having someone to help you co-regulate in an initial situation. Hence children. Let's talk about children and co-regulation for a second, because I feel like this is really where this lesson is learned for neurodivergent kids, especially ones whose parents have not discovered yet that this child is neurodivergent. Children are tiny humans with feelings. Baseline conversation. Tiny humans with feelings. Now, these tiny humans have absolutely zero controls.
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt for a second.
What?
Because I know people are going to be like, no shit, children are tiny humans with feelings. Children are tiny humans with valid feelings.
Yes. Absolutely.
Not inappropriate feelings, not crying for no reason feelings.
Yes.
Children are tiny humans with valid feelings. Okay.
Yes. So children cannot typically name their complex emotions that they're having. They probably don't even understand that they can be happy, sad, and confused all at the same time. Like whatever, like they don't understand complex emotions. They also, like, if you think Inside Out, the movie, because this is like my favorite movie to reference for emotions.
So much.
It's such a wonderful movie. And a new one is coming out and my kiddo was so excited. You know, there's that entire like, and they had this control table, but in the movie, they don't start with a lot of controls. They eventually, like, it just starts with joy, and then sadness shows up, and then anger, and then disgust, and then like all of those people come and join, and the control panel expands. So if we're talking about tiny humans, they don't come with a lot of controls in the emotions department. And so we as the adults have to help them add controls to their control panel of emotions. And that does not mean that the control panel makes the emotions go away or stop. It just might help them kind of learn to adapt in a situation and figure things out. So, where was I going with this? When we have kids who are any kid who doesn't have someone helping them with co-regulation and is just told, why do you cry so much? You're overreacting. Geez, can't you just take a hint or whatever? I'm not saying I haven't.
Now is not the time.
Yes. No, I'm not saying I haven't said these things in my lifetime. I'm not pretending that
I'll give you something to cry about.
Right. But by saying these things, we are telling this child that their emotions are not valid. Now, a lot of neurodivergent kiddos, their emotions are even stronger than a typical child in that situation. So then we're telling them that they are not valid. Not just that their emotions aren't valid, especially if they have RSD. We are now telling them that they are not valid, that their experience is not valid. And so then that perpetuates into adolescence and adulthood, and it continues on. And then we end up with adults that are hiding in holes against their will because they don't know that there's another option.
Right. And one of the great things that we can do as adults in the lives of children is to model, right? Is to model this, both self-regulation and co-regulation, right? Yes. Because I'm not saying that self-regulation is not important. Self-awareness is one of the most important things that we can ever do and have for ourselves. Because that is where we get those insights into making consensual decisions. Mm-hmm. Because we know what we want and we know what we don't want and we know the reasons why. But that is harder for some people. It is less hard for our children as adults when they have adults in their life while they are children that are able to do these things, that model these things, and help them learn these things at a younger age than many of us did.
Correct.
Right? Because most of our parents were not those people. They did not grow up in a generation where this was the cool thing to do. So unless you had the super lovey, hippy dippy parents who were all about self-awareness and all of that, you didn't have that. And even if you did have those parents, they may not have been doing it in the best ways because they didn't quite know how. So the things that we know today as parents are a little bit different than what we got as children. And it's never too late. It's never too late to start that process. If your kid is 15 years old, it's not too late to start. If you are just now realizing and recognizing it yourself, it's okay to have those conversations with your kids and start helping them learn some of those skills so they don't have to do it on their own like you did. And I know right now I'm speaking from my own experience, right? I had to learn all of this on my own. Not everybody has to do that, but it's okay if you did. It's okay if you're still in the learning process, and it's okay to start having those conversations with your kids whenever. Yes. It's never, ever, ever too late. And your friends and everybody else.
Yeah. And it's also important to show that you can become dysregulated, not purposely dysregulate yourself. Let me make that clear. But when you become dysregulated, to be like, oh, my body feels wonky, like, or whatever you want to use for your words, for your body, when you're expressing to your kids that you also get dysregulated, so that they can see that this is a normal human experience. And these are the things that you're doing. Like, if I become dysregulated and I yell, because that is my first reaction when I am dysregulated, is yell and kind of hide. I go, oh, mommy is super dysregulated. What do you think mommy can do to help her body? And we kind of problem solve, because typically my kiddo is calmer than I am in that scenario. And it's not my kiddo's responsibility to help me, but it helps my kiddo recognize dysregulation and pair it with a method to help. So I'm not expecting my child to regulate me in reality. Mm-hmm. And if I can't do this little learning lesson while I am dysregulated, I just say, mommy needs a break. And mommy needs to not be around people right now because her body is just not okay.
Right.
And those things are very important as well. And that's more like self-regulation and learning self-regulation than co-regulation. But
it is, but it's also, it's helping them. Number one, that takes the pressure off of them, because a lot of times if they don't know what's going on and you're yelling and screaming and they don't know what's going on, they're going to internalize that and they're going to think that that's their fault. And then they're going to try fixing it by fawning a lot of times. So we've got the fight, flight, freeze. Well, there's this other thing that's called fawning. That is where it's I'm going to roll over on my back and show you my belly and let you know that it's okay. And you know what I mean? Like, yeah. I know I'm bringing in a whole like dog reference, but that's basically what fawning is. It's putting yourself into a possibly dangerous situation in order to regulate the situation and make everybody else feel okay. Often at your own expense. And we don't want our kids to do that. We don't want them to have that automatic reaction when somebody is angry or upset or yelling or frustrated. We want them to understand that it's not their fault. They didn't do this. They don't need to feel ashamed of anything. And how can we do that if we don't voice it? Right. And I don't have little kids anymore. My son is 23 years old and a grown-ass man. He, I mean, he is. He's married and, you know, all that stuff. So, but there were times when he was younger where I didn't have the words and the support to be able to help him understand that it wasn't his fault. Yeah. For example, video games. I like video games. He likes video games. He would be playing a video game and it would be making noise that was a consistent pitch that I didn't like, and it was consistently inconsistent, if that makes any sense whatsoever.
Absolute sense, yes.
Right? Like there's a consistent pattern that happens and then it stops. And then it comes back and then it stops, but there's not consistency in the amount of time that it stops. And so you never know when it's coming at you. I guess I don't need to explain this whole thing. But that's where my brain goes with those sounds. And so I would come home from work. I would be frustrated. I would hear these sounds. I would tell him to turn it down. He would turn it down to like 2. And I would be like, turn it down. I can't stand that sound. Turn that shit down. You know, like, because I would get so angry. And anger and yelling was my first response. It didn't have anything to do with him. It was my overwhelm, right? It was my overwhelm, not his.
Yeah.
But I wasn't, I wasn't supporting it in the way that it needed to be supported. I didn't have somebody to help me with that. Things are a lot different now. That was a long time ago. So things are a lot different now, and I wish that I knew then what I know now.
Yeah, and it's something like that we have had to kind of negotiate, because the 2 adults in this house get dysregulated on the regs. And like, if I'm the calm person and my partner is dysregulated, I call out when the responses are, no, you need to go. This is not, you can't, like, I accept that you are dysregulated. I accept that you are feeling overwhelmed, but I need you to remove yourself from the public situation because it is becoming something we cannot safely, not that my partner is harming anybody, but like, if you need to go scream, please go scream somewhere else. Like, you are in the public areas where, the family is not going to move. Like, I'm cooking in the kitchen, can't move. Like,
Right. And so you're doing co-regulation by helping them recognize this is not the space for that. Right. We have a pre-negotiated space for you to go and deal with that.
Right. And one of the things that has really been hard lately is when the kiddo is dysregulated and then we get to the point of no return dysregulation.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Where there's nothing you can do. I mean, there's things you can do, but it doesn't actually make them better. And you kind of have to wait for some resolution. I have had to get much better by choice at sticking in the room during those situations and just being like, I'm here if you need me, because I realized if I leave the room, they're alone.
Yeah.
That doesn't teach them anything. Like,
other than if you are your true authentic self and share your true authentic feelings, nobody wants to be around you.
Right. And are there times where I am becoming so dysregulated from it that I have to leave the room? Yes, but I caveat it with something so that the kiddo does not think that it is their responsibility or anything to deal with me. And so I'll be like, I love you. I realize you're having strong emotions. Mommy needs to take a moment. I will be right back, or I'll be back in 2 minutes. But I don't say, when you're calm, I'll come back.
Right. When you know how to behave correctly.
Right. I've had to, and it's something I had to learn. I'm not saying I didn't say that in the past. We do say calm body a lot, but not in the sense of you have to have a calm body. It's like, ooh, our body is not, it's becoming uncalm or whatever I say in the moment. Like, but I'm never like, you're a shitty person because you're not calm. because I would be a shitty person all the damn time because I'm never calm.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is a lot of that co-regulation. But I will say this. The skills that I've learned helping my kiddo have helped everyone in my life.
Right.
Because
our kids
it's
teach
the same
us
skills.
so much.
Yeah, it's the same
Yeah,
skills.
our kids teach us so much. I mean, a lot of the learning and the reflection and everything that I did was because I wanted to be the best parent who I could be. So I would ask for support, and I would go to therapy, and I would say, I'm really struggling with this. And I would, instead of not treating my ADHD, because at the time when he was young, that was all I had. I'm air quoting here because
like air quote bunny rabbits.
The diagnosis that I had was ADHD. At that time, we did not know that I am also autistic. So I had to I didn't like treating it. I didn't like taking medication. This is a classic ADHD thing. A lot of us, we don't like necessarily the feeling of taking medication. So sometimes we had to have people outside of ourselves let us know if, like, Angela, I see you trying to do the things, but you're really struggling to do the things. So maybe you need a little bit of extra support by taking your medication like you're supposed to. And then I would, fuss and be irritated, but I don't like taking my medication. It makes me boring, and I feel, I feel dead inside. And okay, well, then that's not the right medication.
Yes.
So let's get some different support and figure out what's going on. That we can't do that by ourselves.
No.
We cannot do that by ourselves. And that's why I think it's so important, this whole neurodiversity movement that is happening right now, where people are starting to understand that neurodiversity is a thing, and that in every room full of people, I shouldn't say every, because that's not true. You could have a room of autistic people and not have any neurotypicals in the room. But in every, in most spaces, you are going to have neurotypical people, autistic people, ADHD people, dyslexic people, Tourette's people. Like, you're going to have the octopus and the velociraptor in the same room.
Yes, absolutely.
We totally need to make a cartoon of that.
And my velociraptoriness is going to trigger some people's octopusiness. Oh, that sounded like a bad James Bond movie.
Yes, I love it.
Okay, we're done. Episode's over. Can't recover from this.
That's an episode in and of itself.
Why did I see awkward humans? I'm an awkward human. I literally walk into the room and go, "Hi, I'm Molly, and I'm awkward," because that is the level of awkward lately that I come up with the words that I say. Thank God.
I am not sure if anybody else has ever said the word octopusiness before. I love it. I love it. I think I need to make a shirt. I think we need to make a shirt and put it in the shop for this. Yes. We will talk about that later. Okay. While Molly regulates over there, I love it. Okay. So co-regulation. We have to co-regulate when we do really awkward things like that, and sometimes that just means that we laugh with each other, and we let that we just let it go. We just let it go. Why can't people do that when it's a group of people? Like, okay, in a classroom with a bunch of 12-year-olds, somebody farts. That is hilarious. Okay, farting is funny.
Mm-hmm.
But if somebody laughs, then they're shamed for it. Why?
Yeah.
Why? Why can we not all just laugh at that and help the person who is feeling embarrassed for farting? Could we just all, like join in and make it not an awkward thing and just be like, oh my God, that was great. Instead of being, oh my God, that was gross. And don't you laugh. Don't anybody laugh, because we have to be serious and move on. Why?
I think that I am making an assumption and a analysis here. Let me just an assumptive analysis. That it's probably because looking at it from a sense of logic, it's like you fart, they fart, we all fart. Farts are funny. Okay. Mm-hmm. Statement of fact. We're going to laugh about it because it was fucking funny and we're moving on.
Right.
But other people who have that social rule construct where they have to stick to the social construct of farts are a bodily function that we hide and nobody farts because it is not socially acceptable. I think that's where the disconnect is. We're like, oh, bodily function, farts are funny. And there's this entire other population that is like, that is not socially acceptable. And we are just not doing that.
Right. Which means that the social narrative, going back to the very beginning of this, the social narrative is don't support each other.
Yep.
Right? Like, that's an embarrassing thing that happens because it's been shamed so much. And now we're going to add more shame onto it.
Right. Well, and I
want that to go away.
Right. I mean, like, where did farts become not a bodily function? I'm assuming it's from before people knew what farts were and they thought it was something else. And so that became not that. If somebody is a fart expert, please message us. I want to know. But did that social rule come about because people didn't understand the medical science behind farts? And so it became not a funny thing. Anyway, I'm getting on tangents on farts.
Yes, we could go into that and spend a whole lot of time talking about that because it's interesting. It's interesting, and you and I tend to be very interested in social constructs and how things come up and how they happen, and we could spend a whole lot of time talking about all of those things. But time says that we can't.
I know. I just looked at that.
Yes, time says that we can't. I would really like to hear people's questions.
Yes.
About co-regulation. I really want people to get on that Ask Us Anything form and ask us questions about self-regulation, co-regulation, because these questions help us they help us focus. They help us focus all of the things that you and I want to talk about, right. And we can change the topic of what we're going to talk about 15 times throughout the week based on conversations that we have.
Yeah. And if we got enough questions, we could do a once a month Q&A episode too. That would be amazing.
I know. Wouldn't that be great? Instead of just talking about the stuff, our own interests, we could actually dive into and maybe learn new things even.
Absolutely.
From other people, because I guarantee if somebody's asking questions and we don't know the answers, then we're going to find experts who do, because we're resourceful like that. And we have a lot of people within our referral network who have different specialties and different interests, and we would love to bring them on. But we need to know.
Yes.
We need to know that that's the interest.
And my brain has gone this way while we're talking about this. So I just need to pedal back a minute. When you're talking about people who have questions about self-regulation, co-regulation, I also would say a lot of us have learned that codependency is bad when in reality, we are not codependent, we're co-regulating. And I feel like there might be a lot of questions about the difference between codependency or co-regulation, or if you have questions about different things, I feel like that might be something people might be thinking as well.
That might need to be a whole episode, because codependency is completely a different thing than co-regulation. But like you said, they often get misunderstood, one for the other, confused. Yes. So that would be something really great to talk about.
Yes. Okay. One more admin note. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Yes. We are official on the Apple Podcast now.
Finally.
Right.
Thank you, Podbean. Right? Thank you, Podbean, for coming to the rescue after weeks of struggle. And they bam, answered the question, had the information we needed, and fixed everything so quickly. It was wonderful and amazing, and I am so grateful to them.
Yes, agreed. Thank you, Podbean. So now that we are officially on all the channels, if you've been loving what you've been hearing, please share. Please share your favorite episodes, your favorite moments. Don't forget to subscribe, things like that. All the things that we're supposed to say at that point.
All the things. Okay. Thanks for listening to Drudgery, Dreams, and In Between, a weekly live podcast coming to you every Tuesday at 9 a.m. Central, 7 a.m. Pacific. Subscribe now wherever podcasts are found. If you'd like to support the podcast, be sure to leave a rating and review and share with your friends. To catch all the latest from us, visit us at drudgeryanddreams.com and follow on your favorite social media platforms at Drudgery and Dreams. Thanks again. See you next time.